It would be really nice if all the money that we receive from payments from our customers just went right into our pocket and we could spend it on whatever we need to. But the fact is, that's not the way it works. In business, there are a lot of different things that have to come off of that. You have terms like gross profit and net profit. We won't get too much into the terminology, but what we do know is there are bills to pay. It could be for invoices that you already had, and you had products that were part of those invoices. Those might need to be billed directly to the customer. It could be just for products that you purchased, or it could even be for overhead like power and electricity and water bills, those types of things. In this chapter, we'll learn how to work with accounts payable, how to enter bills, and maybe more importantly, how to pay bills, including printing checks. Hopefully you're able to see as you're working through QuickBooks that things really become easier, not harder. You find that there are a lot of things in common rather than different. Well, now it's time to take a look at getting reimbursed for expenses, things like paying for inventory and entering bills for services. All of this is really basically the same. Not only are they done the same way, but it's very similar to the other activities that you've become accustomed to. I'm going to start by creating a new bill. This is something that I don't have yet. It's just received, and I don't have any records really in QuickBooks about it. But what I did is I ordered an Office 2007 CBT, and I need to bill that directly to the client. What I can do is go up to the vendors menu, because vendors are who supply us with the CBTs, and I'm going to enter a bill. I'm going to enter the name of the vendor that's already existing, which of course is Total Training. I'll put in a date, and I'll put in a reference number, which basically is going to be the PO number that I had given them, or maybe it was just a verbal phone contact. In this case, I'm going to say this was very quick and informal. It was just verbal. Normally, you don't put a reference number in for something verbal, but what this does is it reminds me that it was verbal, so I'm not hunting around for paperwork that doesn't actually exist. Now, I went ahead and received a bill for them. I can put in the amount due. I also know my terms, if I have a discount date, and I have a memo. But I'm going to skip all of this for now, and I'm going to go down to the bottom half. Instead of being just an expense, this actually was a purchase for an item. So I'll choose the item from my items list. I only ordered one. And I can see that by putting this in the bottom half, it's already filling in the amount due on top. That saves me some work, especially if I had multiple items, I wouldn't have to do the math. Now comes the part that makes this a little bit different. This time, and usually this time only, or at least in this case, I want to bill this to a client. You don't have to always bill it to the client. Sometimes you just want to associate it with the client, and there are two different ways to do that. First, though, I have to select the customer. This was actually a brand new customer that doesn't exist in QuickBooks yet, so I'm going to choose Add New. And it was Daughtry Finance, so I'll type in the name. And I'll go ahead and just save that. I'm not going to take the time right now to put in all of those details. Right now I'm just trying to get the bill put in. Daughtry Finance now lives in this particular bill, so I've linked them together. What's the important part, other than putting in the correct customer and job, is the last column, which is a check mark. Is it billable or not? If I purchased something as part of a job for Daughtry Finance and I wanted to be able to keep track of my profitability for the job, then I might take the check mark off. That means a $125 expense will be attributed to the project, but it doesn't necessarily show up on a bill. If, on the other hand, I had collected this and told the customer, I need to go ahead and order it and I'll just bill you directly, or I wanted to show it on their invoice, then I put the check mark on. That's the only difference between the two. Naturally, if I had made purchases from Total Training and I didn't want to attribute them to anybody, I was just keeping them for inventory, one of two things would have happened. Either I would have left these two columns blank, or I would have created a PO and received it as actual inventory. This way I'm kind of bypassing the inventory. Because it's not going into my inventory, it's directly going to a client. So as there usually is, there's more than one way to do things on a computer. Some are more right than others. This one, in this case, is just fine the way it is. I'll go ahead and say Save and Close. The next thing I need to do is I have received a bill from UCert for some certification vouchers that I received a while ago. That was through a PO. I received the vouchers, I created an item receipt, but they didn't send me a bill. The bill's now coming later, and I've received it. So now I need to link together the fact that I have a bill with that original purchase of the inventory. What I need to do for this is to go back to the vendors menu. So I didn't get a bill for one, And I never even had the transaction for the other, but they all have to do with vendors and paying. So we're going to go to the vendors menu for all of it. We looked at entering bills. We'll get to paying bills in just a minute. We've talked about working with inventory before, but if you look down about halfway down, you'll see enter bill for received items. That's different than enter bills at the top. Enter bills at the top is just a brand new bill. This is going to link two together, the bill with the received items. Give that a click. What it needs to know, of course, is who the vendor is, and it was UCert. It comes back and it says, aha, I see that on the 8th of July you received some vouchers, so I can select that and say OK. It comes up with it partially pre-filled. It has the name of the vendor, it has the amount due, it tells me what the due date is based on when I receive the items, and down at the bottom it also fills in what the items are. So this is really a quick and easy way if a vendor doesn't send you the bill along with the items and they send it under separate cover. All I really have to do at this point is click Save and Close. And I'll save the transaction. Now let's do something that doesn't really have anything to do with inventory items or things like that. It's just kind of a miscellaneous expense. It still has to go through a vendor, and I'm still going to enter a bill. Maybe one of the spouses of one of our employees got sick and we wanted to send some flowers. I'm going to type in a new vendor. It will tell me automatically that they're not in my list, and I'll just do a quick add. This is not somebody that I plan on doing business with very often, so I don't need to have a whole lot of information. By doing quick add, it saves the name of the vendor. It's in all of my lists now, but I don't get the opportunity to add things like phone numbers, contact information, and so forth. I'll go down to the bottom, and because this is not an inventory item or an item that we have in our item list, it's just going to be under plain old expenses. Probably the hardest thing to do with miscellaneous expenses is figure out what account it goes under. Well, it's not travel, it wasn't a utility, it wasn't continuing education, it wasn't for dues and subscriptions. Some people might put it under office supplies. I'm not sure that that's necessarily accurate. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm not sure what to put that under. I'm going to put that in my Ask My Accountant field. Those are things that kind of stay there temporarily until I get some good advice on where to put it. Now I can continue filling this out with the amount and the memo. A bouquet of flowers, and we are not attributing this to a customer job and it's not billable, so that's all we need to do. We'll go down to the bottom and save and close. Now we've had the opportunity to enter 3 bills. Basically they're entered the same way, but there are little intricacies that make each of them a little bit different on how they're handled and how they're originally created.